Red have just announced some really exciting news. The Komodo X and Raptor X are now both available with Nikon's Z lens mount instead of Canon RF. I'm Jake from CVP, and today I want to explore what this means and why it's such an interesting and exciting announcement. Let's get into it. Since Nikon acquired Red last year, we've been patiently waiting to see the aftermath of this interesting move, and they have kept us waiting and speculating for what feels like ages now. Red offering Z-mount versions of their cameras was something we thought was certainly going to happen, and it's great to finally see these cameras come to life. All of Red's existing cameras, apart from the XL, have been available with Canon's RF mount, which has had its benefits and drawbacks. But I really think the change to Z-mount is a really smart and great change for several reasons. This is only a quick first look, as we didn't have too long with the cameras, but we'll be getting them back in for a deeper look as soon as we can. So if you have any questions after watching this video, let us know in the comments. First off, we can see that the fronts of the cameras have changed quite a bit to accommodate that lovely new golden yellow mount. The buttons and lock are more recessed into the body. It feels familiar, but still a little bit different. The bright yellow Z mount and lock lever will be a nice, obvious way to know which mount camera you have when sat next to the Raptor X's, which is red, and the Komodo X's, which is black. Like the RF versions of these cameras, this new Z mount is locking, so you turn the lens on and then lock it down with the lever around the mount. For me, it's definitely going to take some time to get used to mounting the lens in the opposite direction, but the mount overall feels very solid. Personally, I think Red's design of these traditionally photographic mounts, but with the ability to secure them down, is one of the best implementations of a mount like this. It's really nice to use and means that manually focusing with Z-mount lenses is smooth without really any wobble in the mount at all. One great thing with Z-mount is that it has a really shallow flange depth of 16mm, which means that you can adapt a huge range of lenses onto it, even more than RF, as it's 4mm shallower compared to RF's 20mm depth. This includes all the standards like PL, EF, but even Sony's E-mount lenses, which honestly is a massive plus for these cameras, and will make them not only more flexible, but it also opens them up to everyone who's invested into Sony's E-mount glass but wants to upgrade their camera body to a Red or Nikon without having to sell all the lenses that they have invested into. Megadap, Viltrox, Newer and Mica all make Z-to-E adapters that provide full data pass-through for control and autofocus. These adapters have become decently popular with Z series cameras. I think that could be the case with these two new cameras as well. So we want to get all of them in and test them out and see which one works best with these new Red cameras. There are so many E-mount lenses from both Sony and third-party manufacturers that you should be able to harness with these cameras now. Even though this video was very last minute, I did manage to grab this newer Z-to-E adapter for our quick first look shoot. It's honestly pretty bizarre to see a Sony lens on a Red camera, and I was very skeptical on how it was going to perform. Surprisingly, it works pretty well. When throwing a 24-70mm f2.8 G Master 2 on these cameras with this adapter, we can see that we get full lens control, focal length pass-through, decent manual focus performance, and the iris ring works perfectly. It also allows for autofocus, but we'll talk more about that later. You can also use the buttons on the lens and redefine how these behave in the camera to a bunch of functions. These can be defined as short or long presses, and even though there are two buttons on this given lens for example, they both function as just one. One thing we aren't getting passed through with this adapter to the camera is focus distance, and according to Red, this is possible with the Megadap adapter. Mounting this adapter on the camera can be a bit fiddly because it's just so small, so it will definitely take some time to get used to. We found it easiest to mount it onto a lens first and then onto the camera, and then change E-mount lenses from there without taking the mount off the camera. There is also no real satisfying click when mounting this adapter onto the Z mount, so you can't really tell when it's mounted properly. When mounting an E-mount lens onto the adapter, you need to lock it into place once fully rotated using this little lever here. Once they're all on and locked down, it does feel decently robust, but it's certainly going to take some time to get used to switching lenses. Nikon also have a large range of Z-mount lenses available, and while I haven't tested too many personally, I have heard glowing reviews of a lot of their lenses, so I'm very intrigued to see how they perform when it comes to shooting video. For a lens nerd like me, having so many interesting lenses to check out from Nikon that I haven't tested before is really exciting. Unfortunately, Bruno from Nikon brought in a lot for us to check out. It's interesting to see and learn the differences between the different ranges that Nikon offer, and which ones should be better for video users. Let us know if there are any Nikon lenses you'd like to see us check out down in the comments below. With these new cameras, Red will also be offering the Komodo X in a bundle, which will include Nikon's new 28-135mm f4 powered zoom lens. which has been designed specifically for a more video-focused shooter. But this will only be available in the US, though of course the Nikon lens will be available globally separately. While this lens has been designed for covering full-frame Nikon cameras, it will probably vignette on the Raptor's 8K 17:9 mode, so that's why they have offered it with the Komodo X. We couldn't get this lens in time to test with these cameras unfortunately, but it sounds like it has some interesting integration with these cameras. We should be checking it out when we can, so let us know if you have any questions about it down below. Delving into the menu, you have the ability to tweak how Z-mount lenses behave with these cameras. With the RF cameras and lenses, you can't control the focus direction, focus throw amount, or whether it's a linear throw or not in the menu, which you can when using Z-mount lenses with these new cameras. This is something you can do on a few other camera systems, and can even to a certain degree on Canon's RF cinema cameras. Nikon lenses normally have focus rotations that are the opposite to Cine lenses, Canon and Sony lenses, but fortunately by default this reverse function is enabled, which I think will be how most people will want to keep it. But if you're a Nikon shooter, you have the ability to switch back if you want to. One of the big benefits that focus-by-wire lenses can have is that they can be programmed to have different rotation amounts, and this is possible with some Z-mount lenses on these cameras. When you toggle out of the non-linear mode into linear, you can dial in from 30 degrees all the way up to 720 degrees, with loads of amounts to choose from between them, so you can really dial in your rotation for your preference. This means you can go nice and short if you're operating handheld, or long if you're doing a more controlled pull. All of these features are really great to see, and I wish we could be this granular with other camera systems as well. It's honestly such a good range of customization, and reflects Red's Cine mindset design ethos they had in mind with this system. It sounds like this is just the start of these new features, so I'm really excited to see what else comes from this partnership. From our brief time shooting with these cameras, the manual focus experience is actually very good with both Z-mount and E-mount adapted lenses. The fact you can customize the lens behavior as much as we've said means that putting focus feels far more consistent than with RF native lenses on the older cameras. The insane Nikon Nox that we threw on the Raptor X is actually a mechanically focusing lens, not focused by wire, so this was much harder to focus as the focus throw was massive on it. For the most part, I chucked the lenses into linear with a 180 degree focus rotation, which for shooting handheld solo I found really nice to use, and much more consistent and responsive than some of the Red RF combos that I've used in the past. Like with RF mount lenses, you have the ability to redefine what the control rings do on some of the Z-mount lenses. The rings on these Z-mount lenses are much smoother than the RF ones, though you could get Canon to declick them if you wanted. This means that personally I find the Z-mount rings much nicer for iris control as it's far less steppy. This is something that Red have specifically spoken about. The engineers have tried to make this iris control feel similar to how a PL lens responds, and less like it's clicked. Then if you change the control ring to something like your ISO or Kelvin, the response becomes a bit more steppy, so you can control these functions in a slightly nicer way. It's great to have a range of things you can rebind this to, but I think most video or cine shooters will leave it as iris control. A lot of Nikon lenses also have lens buttons built onto them, which you can also customize in the menu. This includes some interesting functions such as using the button to swap between them, what the control ring does, move between presets, and one we found really handy, toggle AF. As we showed earlier with the E-mount lenses, there is also the ability to define how they behave for a regular press and a long press, so you can customize them pretty deeply. Using the lens rings and buttons alongside the camera user buttons will allow you to really customize how you want the camera set up, which should make shooting much faster. Oh yeah, one thing with Nikon lenses is that they don't have buttons for controlling the in-lens stabilisation, which Nikon calls VR or vibration reduction, so you have to control it through camera. Fortunately, Red has made it so you can toggle this on and off in the menu, and even assign it to custom buttons including the ones on a lens. Red have also updated their autofocus system in these new cameras. Nikon's autofocus in their Z-mount cameras is fantastic, so since their acquisition of Red, that's one thing people have been hoping to see come over onto their systems, me included. The concept of having a V-Raptor X with top-tier autofocus performance is insane, and would make wildlife, sports, live events, and a lot of other filmmakers very, very happy. For this, Nikon has worked with Red to do what they can with the existing architecture and sensor design of the Komodo X and Raptor X cameras. But of course, these cameras are limited compared to Nikon's more photography-first cameras. Some of these autofocus updates are also coming to the KX and RX RF mount cameras, but it will be limited compared to the system on the Z-mount versions. The firmware these cameras are running are early engineering builds, so we can't evaluate performance too in-depthly, but we can take a look at how it works and how to possibly get the most out of it. Red has actually separated out the autofocus features into this new focus system tab separate to the other lens controls. In here you can control a bunch of things. AF sensitivity is part of the camera's AF algorithms, so it's something that the RF cameras can benefit from as well. You can define this between +5 and -5, and this changes how sensitive the camera is at deciding when to react to a change in its focus area, with +5 being the most reactive and -5 being the slowest. AF speed is how fast the lens will actually rack focus. This is more closely tied between the lens and the camera, so is only possible with Z-mount cameras and lenses. You can dial it in again from -5 to +5, with -5 being the slowest and +5 being the fastest. So this is a good way to dial in how your focus pull looks. +5 would be good for scenes or subjects where you want the camera to pull and track fast, and then somewhere between 0 to -5 for slower, more natural looking pulls. This would be good for more controlled setups like a product shoot or film. I even chucked it into my talking head setup and it worked really well here too. If you have the DSM-C3 screen on either of these cameras, you can actually touch to focus, but you need to be in the autofocus mode at the top here. I really wish you could just enable a mode where you can tap to focus on the home screen. Hopefully this is something Red and SMOHD can add to this system. Otherwise, this works really well when you want to tap between subjects, but I do want to test this whole system more in-depthly soon. We did, however, manage to shoot some testing with this new system, but our time was very limited. We actually managed to compare the AF performance against the RF Komodo X, but during this testing we fed back some stuff to Red, and they actually discovered a bug to do with how faces are being detected in the frame, which is now fixed, so I don't really want to evaluate it too much. It's certainly still not going to touch the systems from the likes of Nikon and Sony when it comes to tracking and stickiness, but this is easily some of the best autofocus I've seen in a Red. We managed to get a few usable tracking shots, and with the 600mm on, it worked really well in our warehouse aisle scene. I also shot some test clips with one of our fantastic lens engineers, Gavin, where I used a bunch of autofocus lenses, and again, I think it does a decent job, but certainly not perfect. I mainly used the AF box and touchscreen function to move it around for the different compositions. I also shot with a Noct in this scene as well, which is a very special lens, but it's just manual focus. With the newer adapter we had for our very brief testing, it honestly didn't work very well during our autofocus tests. We think this is because the adapter doesn't feed through focus distance, which we think is being taken into account when autofocusing. This means currently with this adapter, it hunts and pulses quite a bit, but hopefully with some new firmwares, this improves. This adapter worked fine when it came to manual focus though. Red have also said that the Megadap adapter performs the best from their initial testing, and should feed out focus distance to the camera, which should mean improved autofocus. We'll be getting one into test as soon as possible though. When we used the new adapter on some of the Nikon cameras, it actually performed really well, so hopefully this is just a firmware issue. We also noticed that when using Sony lenses on this new adapter, currently you do not have the ability to control the speed autofocus parameter, just the sensitivity, but Red have confirmed that with the Megadap adapter you should see that as well. However, this parameter has been designed for Z-mount lenses really, so Red says performance can vary. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to buy anything you see in this video or any other filmmaking or photography gear, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. These cameras and their RF counterparts don't have in-camera lens corrections, which means you are seeing these RF and Z-mount lenses completely uncorrected. This means there's quite a few RF lenses which may not perform up to some people's standards on Red cameras, but do perfectly fine on Canon cameras with the corrections turned on. This can be most notably an issue with coverage, as most of the RF and Z-mount lenses are designed for the full frame 36x24mm full frame standard, whereas the Raptor X's 8K VV sensor is much wider, which means you are seeing parts of the lenses Nikon and Canon didn't expect you to see. This could result with hard cut coverage issues, or if it does cover, optical imperfections towards the corners. If you want to crop into roughly the same width as these standard still sensors, you need to step down to 7K 16:9, but some lenses will cover some of the 8K formats. You just need to test them to be sure and be happy with what coverage you're getting. Red showed me a sneak peek of a coverage tool that they are making to help people see what Nikon lenses will cover the Raptor X in its different formats, and it looks really good. We did manage to chuck a few lenses on to check coverage, and I was actually quite impressed at how many covered the full width 8K really well. With Nikon working much closer with Red now, this hopefully means that you'll have the option to enable lens corrections for Nikon's lenses in camera as well as in REDCINE-X or even Resolve. That way you can decide what lens performance you prefer with a given lens. Though it does sound like Nikon's lenses design philosophy is more about having the best optical performance in the lens with minimal lens corrections in the camera side. but this often results in their lenses being larger and heavier compared to their competition's counterparts. But I'm sure this is something we'll see and evaluate when we start testing more and more Nikon lenses. With this tighter link between camera and lens, I would love to see some kind of gyro post-stabilisation, similar to what Sony offers in their Catalyst Browse software. Though you can currently do this with GyroFlow, which is an open source piece of software that uses the gyro data of a range of different cameras, but it does require you to build lens profiles for your lenses. It would be great to see a red version of this in REDCINE-X and Resolve that is just one click and adjusts, as it knows the lens profile from the metadata that should be stored in the Z-mount lenses. If you want to check out GyroFlow, I've put a link to that in the description below. With these new cameras, Red have also announced Firmware 2 for the Raptor-X and Komodo-X cameras, including the RF versions. This is the version of the software that these new cameras we've been looking at are running today. This new firmware includes all the new lens and focus menus we've shown, though some of those are limited on the RF cameras, support for hold type user buttons, which you can define in the menu. It adds RCP2 over serial, route history to ACMHL, a low power warning video overlay which is output via SDI, as well as some smaller changes. It will be available sometime after launch for the RF cameras, just keep an eye on Red's firmware update pages. So now that these new Z-mount versions are available, what does it mean for the RF version cameras? Well, they actually aren't going anywhere. They will still be available to buy alongside the Z-mount ones. But really, I think a lot of people wanting to buy into the Red ecosystem now will want to go with the Z-mount versions for all of the reasons we've detailed in this video. With Nikon now working closely with Red, it also means that future updates and features will be more tailored towards these Z-mount versions. We've not tested loads of Nikon lenses in the past, but the ones we did check out during our time with them look really nice. RF lenses are great as well, and with a lot of them featuring optical stabilisation, they can be a really good option for more run and gun filmmaking styles. However, they do leave a little bit to be desired when using them on Red cameras. Mainly their manual focus experience and lack of optical corrections in the cameras. Let us know if you were to grab one of these cameras now, would you go with Z or RF mount? These new Z variants of the Komodo X and the Raptor-X will be available body only at the same price as the RF versions of the cameras, and they'll also be available in a range of bundles and packages which you can see details of here. But if you're an existing Komodo X or Raptor-X user and are thinking, damn it, I really want that shiny yellow Z mount on my camera now as well. Well, Red will be running upgrades for these cameras where you can pay a fee of around $1,600 or around £1,400 to convert it to Z mount if you want. If you own a Raptor VV or Super 35, the only way to upgrade to this mount is upgrading your camera to an X, and there is no upgrade possible for the OG Komodo unfortunately. Alternatively, Red will also be running a bunch of trade-in offers if you own another existing Red camera and want to upgrade to a Raptor X with Z mount. If you want to learn more details about any of this, drop sales@cvp.com an email to learn more. This mount upgrade should be something we can eventually do in our UK engineering department, as we are the UK's only Red certified repair centre. With the announcement of these cameras, Red also announced Z-mount versions of their standard PL mount and PL electronic ND filter adapter packs for the Komodo X and Raptor-X. These are sturdy mounts that connect onto the camera bodies to provide a solid connection when using PL lenses on these cameras. These support data pass-through, and the ND features an electronically controllable ND with a range of clear to then 2 to 7 stops. A good change of these mounts is that they can now provide more power to PL lenses, which means that Fuji zooms that require power can now be powered via the mount without the need for a breakout power cable, which is a nice touch. Both of these mounts should be available in spring this year. Just before this announcement, we caught up with KipperTie, who've made some great accessories over the years for Red cameras, and they've actually got some pretty awesome things coming. First off, they should be bringing out Z-mount versions of pretty much all of their existing RF mount version products. This includes their regular PL adapters, Revolver and Strata for these new cameras. They will also be creating a couple of solutions using LC-Tech's electronic ND system, which sounds really interesting, and are also doing both RF and Z-mount conversion kits for the Zeiss Nanoprimes, which we have with us here today. Earlier in February, Red released a new beta version of the REDCINE-X Pro app, which adds a few new features, but most interestingly, support for Nikon's NRAW. This means that you can import and decode NRAW files through Cine-X and process them like you would with R3D. So you can take advantage of Red's fantastic IPP2 colour pipeline, which results in some really great colour from these NRAW example clips. The chroma noise reduction built into Cine-X is great, and it looks like it does a really good job on these NRAW clips as well. We are planning on getting some Nikon cameras into test very soon, so let us know if you want us to explore this further in the comments. It's going to be really interesting to see how Nikon and Red handle RAW and how they work together in whatever cameras they end up releasing next. These NRAW clips are available to download directly from Nikon's site if you fancy having a play with them yourselves. Other than the mount change, these cameras are the exact same fantastic cinema cameras that you expect from Red. The Raptor-X still offers the same incredible 8K global shutter sensor, which Red have somehow managed to pull similar dynamic range out of compared to the rolling shutter 8K sensor in the regular VV. And they pushed it even further with their extended highlights mode, which effectively captures two different exposures and combines them together to provide an insane amount of dynamic range. This camera is a serious monster and is still one of our favourites available today. The Komodo X is still a fantastic all-rounder at a more attainable price. We've been using it as our primary studio camera for a while now, and it really is a lovely camera to use and captures great images. It shares a lot with the Raptor-X, but in a smaller package housing that great Super 35 6K global shutter sensor. And we'll be upgrading our camera to a Z mount as soon as we can. This is a pretty serious show of what Red and Nikon's partnership holds in store. Z mount versions of Red cameras was one of the first things we guessed they would do. It just makes sense, and Red and Nikon have done an excellent job with these cameras. The Komodo X and Raptor-X were already two of our favourite cinema cameras available, and these new mounts only make them better. Having the ability to use Nikon's excellent range of lenses with an improved autofocus system, and then also having the ability to use E-mount lenses and all the regular adapted lenses makes these systems incredibly versatile. Nikon and Red are now in a unique position to tempt Sony users who've invested into E-mount glass, as these adapters should offer a good shooting experience. But like I said, this is something we want to explore more. I wonder what we can expect next, but it feels like Nikon is really just one great firmware update away from becoming even more relevant in the motion acquisition space. What do you want to see from Nikon and Red next? Let us know in the comments. This has been a very last minute video for us to pull together, so I just want to give a massive shout out and a thank you to Johnny from Red, who brought down a pair of the cameras, and Bruno from Nikon, who brought an insane amount of lenses and cameras down to our Brentford studio for us all to check out for a few hours to test and explore. So if you're interested in grabbing yourself one of these, I've put links in the description below. And if you're in the UK, Red actually have these on their booth at the BSC Expo, which is happening this weekend. We also have a booth at the show where I'll be manning our mini lens bar, so come by and say hi if you're about. We are also running an open house at our beautiful Fitzrovia showroom, where you can check out all the latest and greatest kit, and we'll chauffeur you over to the show afterwards. If you want to come in and test these out for yourself, we'll be getting demo stock into our UK and European showrooms, where you can get your hands on and test the cameras yourself, rig them up, and check out some lenses with one of our knowledgeable technical consultants. If you want to book an appointment, drop demo@cvp.com an email. Anyway, let us know what you think of these cameras down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.